La la la, la la la, la 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 la, la la la. La 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 la. Oh, God damn it! This is like a fucking big thought. Okay. La la la. I just went to the theater and I saw myself a movie. I saw X. Even though I'd never seen them in the theater before, as a child with unmitigated internet access, I would look up the death scenes on YouTube a lot, so I became pretty aware of the series. So I was excited for that, and it was fine. It was trying to be like very serious, and I don't know that that necessarily works in this day and age for a Saw movie. The fans of the Saw movies are like aware of how like stupid it is and how it doesn't make any sense. I feel like if you're gonna make like a new Saw movie, like you should lean into that. I think that's what like the good ones did, like Saw 6. I don't know. This one was like really like just sad for a lot of it. A lot of the movie is just like John Kramer with like sunken eyes, like learning that he's gonna die of cancer, and he like spends a large part of the movie just like he's got like glassy eyes, just like, so I'm going to die, like, and I'm like, bro, this isn't what I signed up for. I wasn't here to like watch a sad drama. The movie starts out with John's doctor being like, yeah, you're gonna die, boy. And then the doctor's like, yeah, you should just try to be happy in your last few months, you know? And then John's like, you want me to die easily? Something like that. It takes a long time for things to actually get going. Like, a long time. I think the marketing for this movie was like good. And I think that like the trailer was like good. It was like fun. I wish that the movie was also like, it kind of had that sense of self-awareness like the trailers did. The stuff that worked for the marketing is the stuff that made the movie kind of not work for me. The trailer gives away the entire first half of the movie as if it's the premise, and it is the premise, but it takes a long time for all of those things to come into place. If you've watched the trailer, then you already know that all of these things are going to happen, but then in the movie they just happen so slowly, and there's a lot of editing that I think could have been done in the movie. There are like 4 different times where he asks about what the procedure is that he's going to be taking, and then they tell him it's a surgery mixed with a drug cocktail. And for some reason they had them say that like 4 different times by like 4 different people, even though I was like, we already heard that once. We didn't need to hear that 4 times, but they kept all of that in. And I feel like that's just like one example of things where I was like, why are we taking so long to get to this? Another part of the marketing that kind of made the movie a little bit for me is that this trap that we've seen like in the posters, the one with the eyes and like the tubes, it looks like cool and like weird and iconic or whatever. That happens in the first, I think, like 15 minutes of the movie, but it doesn't even happen. It's like in his imagination, because he sees this guy in the hospital like gonna steal stuff from a patient who's like in a coma or something, and then John Kramer kind of like looks at him with his eyes, and then it like goes into his brain, and then he's like imagining this guy in the test, and then like, you know, you see it like all come to fruition. He has to like break his fingers or else his eyes get sucked out, and then his eyes get sucked out or whatever, but then it like flashes back and like he's just back in the hospital room, and then the guy is like, he sees that John Kramer's watching him, so he puts the stuff back, and then John Kramer's like, good choice, and then that's it. And I was like, this was like on your poster. I saw that and I said,
Oh.
basically he gets told by this guy in his cancer support group, he's like, I found this person who's doing this like experimental procedure. The one with that they tell you 4 times is a cocktail mixed with the surgery. He's like, I'll give you the website. So John Kramer goes to the website, and then he finds this person. Her name is Celia, and she's like, my dad is this doctor and he heals people, but it's illegal because, you know, big pharma is bad, but you can come down to Mexico. We will suck out that cancer. Like, yeah, suck out those eyeballs. So he goes down to Mexico. In a Saw movie, you're like, if you ever like meet a person, like they're gonna die. You know what I mean? Like any person that you meet is gonna die. So, you know, as soon as he's like, he gets a taxi driver, and I'm like, okay, that taxi driver has lines, he's gonna die. Oh wait, he doesn't though. So he meets this girl called Gabriella. And I don't really know who Gabriella was in all of this, what her role was. All of the other people were pretending to be like doctors, nurses, like anesthesiologists, but Gabriella was just kind of there. He basically was being roomed in this mansion for the duration of the time that he was there for the procedure. And then when he arrived there, Gabriella was there, and she's like, welcome. Yeah, she helped me. And like, that was it. So I don't really know what she was even doing there, to be honest. Like, was she just another person that they hired to be like more credible or something? I don't know. Didn't really make sense to me. You know, the doctor lady, she's like Norwegian. So she has this interesting accent. No offense to the Norwegians. She's like, we're gonna do the surgery tomorrow. There's this lady called Valentina, and I couldn't stop thinking about Valentina from Drag Race. I was like, Valentina, take that thing off your face.
Valentina, this is a lip sync for your life. We need to see your lips.
We have like Mateo, and he's like the anesthesiologist. And then we have, okay, so then it turns out the guy who's like the doctor is actually the taxi driver who drove him from the airport. Which I was like, did they just because that guy was actually a taxi driver. Like, he wasn't pretending to be a taxi driver to pick up like the marks or whatever. Like, he was just actually a taxi driver, because then like when John Kramer or like Amanda captures them, he was like doing another taxi driving. So I was like, they just like found a random taxi driver and they were like, hey, do you want to like pretend to be a doctor for like a little bit? And I guess he just said yeah, and he was like, okay, I gotta go back to my day job. And then we find out that Amanda's there helping, which makes sense because, you know, apparently canonically this is between like the first movie and the second movie. She just looked a lot older than she did in the first movie. Like, she had like some work done in her cheeks, and I think maybe they were trying to do that to like make her look younger, but it just made her look like she was on like Real Housewives or something. You know, and that's fine. I mean, what are you supposed to do about that one? You could do the thing that they did in Indiana Jones. Age her down a little bit.
They freaking mastered that de-aging technology, didn't they?
That would have been good. During this, there is a groundskeeper and a little boy named Carlos. Carlos at one point is like trying to fix his bike like early in the morning for some reason. It's like the sun is like rising and this kid's out there like hammering a bike. And I was like, girl, go to sleep. Jesus Christ. But then John Kramer, being like an engineer, he's like, let me help you. And he goes and he like is fixing the bike or whatever. And this kid doesn't speak English. And he's like, how do you say po in Spanish? And then the kid's like, holla. And then John Kramer goes, holla. And you're like, something's gonna happen there. So then they do the surgery, and he is like being put under, but they're like, it's gonna be like a half a week, half asleep, half awake surgery, because we need to make sure that your brain is still functional or something like that. He is like half awake during the procedure. There's like a camera above him, and then there's this live monitor showing like the brain getting like cut into or whatever, and John Kramer's like, and they're like, wiggle your fingers, and he's like, okay. But then at some point he like is like looking at the monitor, and then they're like, oh shit, oh no. And then they like move it out of his vision or whatever. But then I was like, well, then why did you even have that there to begin with? Like, you didn't have to do that. Like, because then okay, so it turns out the monitor was actually showing a tutorial or like a learning session about how to do brain surgery from like some doctor training videos or something. And so they weren't actually doing surgery on his head. They were just like showing this video of like a tutorial, and they were like pretending to cut into his head. But then I was like, if they didn't want him to look at the screen, then why would they even have it? They didn't have to do that. They didn't have to put it there. They could have knocked him out and pretended like they did surgery. They didn't even have to. 3 out of the 4 of them could have just like taken a break that day, and then they like knock him out and pretend like they did surgery, because all they did was just wrap a bandage on his head and say, don't take it off, because nothing was done. They didn't even pretend to cut into his head. Or they could have at least like cut like a little square of skin off or something, right? Because the lady, Celia, she seemed to have like medical knowledge. She seemed to know stuff. Like, she's like making suggestions about what they're supposed to do in the traps, because she like clearly has medical knowledge. Like, she could have done something at least to make it seem like, you know, at least just for their own sake, so that like if he did take it off, he would be like, oh yeah, there's a little piece missing. But they didn't do that at all. And then for some reason they decided to keep him awake for like part of it. But it seems like the reason why they would want to keep him awake is so that he could like see the screen of the tutorial and then think that they were doing brain surgery. But then when he was looking at it, they were like, oh no, we gotta take this away from him. But then so I was like, why did they even do that to begin with? I don't understand. It doesn't make sense to me. They were in this like secluded like mansion, and then they said that it used to be like a chemical plant or something. They're like, we have to keep our location hidden because the authorities are after us because what we're doing is illegal, but we're trying to save lives, whatever. But then he wakes up and he's in a new spot, and then the lady's like, now you start the rest of your life. I don't know how to do a Norwegian accent. So then he's like, I'm gonna buy a bottle of tequila and a gift card to a liquor store for this girl called Gabriella, who he apparently became really good friends with, even though we didn't see that happening. He was like, but she's my friend. And so then he like goes back to the place, and he was able to like coordinate the where the thing is, even though the location was hidden from him, because he's like smart. And so then he goes back there, and everyone is gone. The location has been evacuated. Everyone said bye. All that's left is some of the medical equipment, and that's it. So he's like, what? Then he finds the case of the video box for the medical tutorials. And then the screen is on, and the screen is still playing it. So he's like seeing the tutorials, and then he's like seeing what he saw on the screen. He's like, wait a freaking minute here. He like takes the bandage off, and oh no, they didn't do anything. Freaking finally, he's like, oh shit, these people choose who live and who die. He didn't really say that, but you know, that's like his whole thing. All the people get kidnapped, and then they all get like chained up or whatever. Starting with the taxi driver. He gets these like bombs attached to his arms, and then he has like some really shittily applied like scalpels. They're like duct taped onto his hands. And it's really weird because he wakes up, and then he's immediately just like, no, oh my god, no, what is this? And then he starts like cutting his arm for some reason, just to make sure that it's sharp. I don't know, it was weird. And John Kramer is like standing behind a glass door, just like,
it ain't over just yet, baby.
He's like, you have to dig through your arms to get rid of the bombs that are attached to them. So then he does it. He like really does it. He like just digs through. I don't really understand how they were attached, because like they were like like metal wires. Like it looked like they were like looped around his arm, into like in his skin. And if they were, then like cutting through your skin isn't gonna get them off. So I didn't really understand how that worked, but he was able to do it. He didn't die. He is like the one person ever who didn't die in a trap. Well, not really though, but we'll get to that. Then he like survives. They blow up behind him. He's like, no. Yeah, and that's when we learned that he was also pretending to be the doctor. I guess he put on like a fake beard or something. That was weird. I was like, y'all just have like fake cosmetics in the back, whatever. You didn't even have to. Everyone else wakes up, and they're like in this room, and there's like Valentina, and then there's Gabriella, and then there's Matteo, and then there's Cecilia. And this movie is weird because most Saw movies take place from the point of view of the people who are in the traps. This movie basically takes place from the point of view of John Kramer, and he and Amanda are like present throughout the entire game, which is very different, because in the other Saw movies, they're always like in a different location, or they're like, you know, maybe watching it from like a camera or something, but like no, they're like fully in it, and then they're just like talking to the people. Like he explains the game to the first girl, Valentina, like in person, just like right in front of her. And this trap was some bullshit. It was stupid. He was like, okay, so first of all, you suck. I felt bad for her. Like, to be honest, like she was like a sex worker, and like when she gets captured, you see that she's almost about to get like SA'd in the back of a car. And I'm like, oh god, like this girl clearly like is going through hard time, and like it doesn't make what she did good, but like I don't feel good in like her being brutalized in this way. Like that doesn't feel like justice. What happens is she has this like sharp wire in front of her, and her neck is like not chained, it's like with a rope, which I'm like, she could cut through that.
Take that thing off of your mouth.
I'd like to keep it on, please.
What she has to do is take this other sharp wire and cut her whole leg off from like here. And then she had to take a tube and then stick it in the bone and suck out the marrow. And then once a certain amount of marrow gets put into the measurer thing, then it'll let her go. And I'm like, what? She's like, put on the thing that stops the bleeding when you, so she like puts that on, but like she doesn't pull it tight enough. So she actually just cuts off her fucking leg. And she does it. She puts the thing in and it sucks out the marrow and it's like literally almost there, but then time runs out and she gets her fucking head cut off. And I was like, she cut off her leg, John. She did it, John. Oh, because she didn't get enough bone marrow out? She cut off her leg. You piece of shit. Oh, that made me mad. Come on, John. What, the line between like living and dying is the fucking bone marrow? She cut off her leg. John Kramer and Amanda are like talking and they're trying to like develop this thing that we already know about, where Amanda's like nervous about doing the traps with Gabriella specifically because Gabriella is addicted to drugs and Amanda used to be addicted to drugs, and it's like, okay, she has a soft spot for that, but then it's like, well, but y'all are kind of just psychopaths anyway. So like, after the girl got her head cut off, they hear like a phone ringing on a little table thing, but they can't reach it. So then Celia's like, I have an idea. Celia goes and freaking cuts open Valentina's body and then takes her intestines out and then uses them as a rope to like pull the cart over. And then she tries to dial someone, and then she calls someone and says like, I've been kidnapped by, and then she gets electrocuted. Oh yeah, because they have things around their necks. And Amanda just kind of pushes a button and it just electrocutes whoever she wants. I don't know how that works, like how because she does it to like multiple people. She can just choose who she electrocutes, I guess. And he was like, Gabriella's next, you have to go prepare her. And then Amanda's like, I'm doing the anesthesiologist next. She attaches the anesthesiologist guy to a machine. Then he's like, you have to cut off a part of your own skull up here and then take out a piece of your brain and then put it in a liquid, and then the liquid dissolves it, and then the dissolving of a liquid then makes the key come out. I don't understand how that worked at all. And then this was another one that made me mad because he also was not a surgeon. So he didn't know how to do any of this. He literally was like, I don't know what any of these tools are. He didn't have that much time. And then he actually does it though. And then he gets like a big chunk of his brain out and then puts it in the liquid and it's like dissolving, but then the time runs out and then it just, this like weird like skull thing clamps on his head. And then like, you saw that it was like heating up with these like burning things and it like clamps on his head. And then I guess his head like roasted to death or something. But there's like a large margin of error for these things. In the first one with Valentina, what if she dropped one of the things, as you might do if you're in an excruciating amount of pain? She was not in a position where she could have even like reached down and grabbed it. Like she was tied up. So like what if she drops it, which is like a total normal and natural thing to do, then like what, game over, like nothing you can do. And he also like, how do we know what's gonna happen if he like takes out a piece of his brain? I don't know anything about brains. And clearly Jigsaw doesn't either. He doesn't know what's going on with his own brain. So what if he took out a part of his brain that like just made him like pass out or something? That could have happened. And then what? That's not something he could control because he doesn't know anything about brains. But anyway, he dies. And that was sad. You're like, well, these people like were shitty. They did like shitty things, but like something about this just didn't feel good. I guess it's not supposed to. But it does seem like the movie wants you on John Kramer's side. And I like just kind of wasn't. They're trying to actually make it seem like he's not a murderer. The whole Saw series has this dumb thing where they're like, he's not actually killing people, he's giving people the choice. And it's like, anyone with two brain cells rubbed together can see that he is killing people. And that's just like a weird thing that you're insisting upon, and it's not true, and everyone knows it. After this dude gets his head roasted, this guy who we saw getting surgery before John Kramer. He comes back to the hospital. His name was Paul? Something like that. Something like Paul. I'm going to call him Paul. Paul comes back and he's like, I want my money back. I want my money back. He's like banging on the garage door. And they're like, oh shit, we have an intruder alert, intruder alert. He has a gun. And then they're able to apprehend him. And then they like tie him to a thing. And he wakes up and then he's like, I was scammed by these people. They're con artists. And then John's like, yeah, I know, me too. And then John's like, but you'll be fine if you just play by the rules. And you can't use that gun over there that he put in the cabinet. And he's like, okay. It's Gabriella's turn. She is attached by the arm and by the leg with like chains. And then the arm is lifting up. And so she's getting pulled up by her arm. And then her leg is like still attached to the chain. So basically she's just like dangling in there. And then there's like this MRI machine. I don't know what it is. Radiation machine. John Kramer's like, you have to take this tool that's hanging in front of you. It's like a club. And you have to break your wrist and your ankle in order to free yourself. Which I was like, This one seemed kind of tame in comparison to the other ones. Like this one lady had to cut her whole leg off, and the other guy had to like chop his brain out. And then this one was like, you have to break your ankle and your hand. Like, I don't want to do that, but like, I'm just like, oh, you could do that. But then as she's doing it, this like, I guess chemotherapy machine, I don't know what it is. It's like turning on at like high volume, like Final Destination style. And so then it's like burning her, I don't know. But then she grabs the club. And this is another one that had like a very high margin of error for me because she could have easily dropped that club and she was like 5 to 10 feet in the air. I don't really know how high she was. Then what? What if she dropped it? She was like about to break her wrist, which I was like, yeah, that's like the place to start. But then this doctor lady, Celia, she's like, no, start with your ankle because then you'll swing out of the way of the machine. But then I was like, but if you started with your wrist, then you would just fall to the ground. And then you'd be out of the way of the machine anyway. And then you could like figure out how to do it without like hanging like a freaking monkey. I don't know. But she like listens to the doctor, breaks her leg, and then she swings out of the way and she's like, oh, Dios mío. But then the machine like moves and it like follows her again. She's getting like burned, which I'm like, is that a thing that happens? Does that happen? She breaks her wrists and then she falls and she's fine, I guess. Like she's like badly burned. And then John Kramer's like, we have to get her to a hospital. And I was like, okay, yeah, like you care. But then turns out the guy, Paul, they let him free. But then he grabs the gun and he's like, you guys, come on, let's go. Let's move, get out there, whatever. Turns out he was actually in on it the whole time. So he was just pretending to be like a patient of theirs so that he could also convince him to do it. She is basically Jigsaw because of the amount of people that are working for her. They release her and then they attach John Kramer to the wall and Amanda to the wall. And then Jigsaw's like, we have to get Gabriella to a hospital or else something bad will happen because she won her trap and so she deserves to live. And then this lady, I guess, is just an actual psychopath because then she just goes, you know what I think of this bitch? And then steps on her neck and kills her. And then Amanda is all like, she has like a big emotional reaction to that, which I was like, girl, you put her in the trap. How are you going to act like you care now? So this lady is just like a psycho. And then the Norwegian lady is like, well, you know what I thought when you killed them? Oh, thank you. Now I don't have to spend the money with so many people. And then to make it even clearer that she's like a bad person, we hear outside Carlos, little boy from earlier, is playing with his ball outside for some reason. I don't know, just kicking the ball. He chooses very strange times to do things because this is like late at night. He must be a vampire or something. So then she goes out and she's like, hey, come inside. I have people that I want you to meet. He comes in. He sees that they're like chained up and he sees like the dead bodies and stuff. And then he's like, oh shit. And so then he tries to run. But then this lady's like, now we're going to attach you to your trap. And we're going to have this kid also be attached to your trap. Because I guess this last trap was meant for 2 people. And of course I'm like, wait, okay, hold on. This last trap was meant for 2 people, but then the only one left was Celia. So who was it meant to be? But then this gets answered in a little bit. He attaches the little boy to the thing, and then attaches John Kramer to the thing, and they're both laying like feet together on these like metal things. It's really hard to explain. If you try to explain a saw trap to people, it's hard to explain. John Kramer is going, no holla, no holla. See, you hear it earlier, he's like, how do you say pull? So he's saying don't pull. And then we figure out why. Because the thing goes up, they're lifted up, and then these spouts come down, and it starts waterboarding them, but with blood. And I was like, how did they get that much blood? Where did they get that blood from in this amount of time? Like, John Kramer was in a city that he didn't even live in. Where did he acquire all of this blood? But I don't know. I guess he just has some like unending supply of blood. Then the Norwegian lady is like, ooh, it's like waterboarding, but with blood. And in my mind, I'm like, blooderboarding. And then she goes, bloodboarding. I went, oh yeah. John Kramer pulls the thing. It switches so that it only pours on John Kramer, and then the little boy is like not getting blood on him. Okay. But then the little boy's like, I'm a good person or whatever. So then he like pulls it too. And then it goes back on him. But then John's like, no. And then he pulls it. And then it's like bloodboarding him, whatever. And then the little boy's trying to pull it. But then John Kramer has got a good grip on it. He's got his grippers on it. So then he can't pull it. Meanwhile, Paul and Celia both run back up to like the control room. They're like, we're gonna get the money and then we're gonna leave or whatever. And then they grab the bag that's supposed to have the money in it, and then they see behind it there's a timer that says 10 minutes. John Kramer, like always, just knows exactly what's gonna happen at any given time. He just always knows. He just knows. We don't have to question it. He just knows. So apparently he knew that Paul was actually with Celia and that he was going to come back. I guess he knew that Paul was going to try to trick them for some reason, even though Paul had no reason to try to trick them. He could have just like shot them. This is another thing that had like a lot of variables that could have just gone very wrong, because he could have just shot them. But anyway, they figured that out. The doors slam close in the control room, so then Celia and Paul are in there. And then there is something over the speaker playing, and they're like, you are bad people, and now only one of you will survive. This like gas starts flowing in from the sides, and I'm not even sure what this gas is, because it seems like it's supposed to be like poisonous for them to breathe in, but then it starts like burning their hands. But then the way that one of them can survive is that there's like a hole in the wall, and they can like stick their head through it, and then they can like breathe out there, but only one person could do it. But I don't understand how that would help if it's also burning your skin. So whatever, they're fighting in there, whatever. While they're fighting, John Kramer literally, they just have like a little like latch on the thing, and he just like gets out, and like then he like gets Carlos out too. And then they're like watching this happen, and Amanda's like covering Carlos's eyes, which I'm like, girl, he has already seen a lot. Like, you think you're protecting him? Like, you did this. You're the one that did this. Then Celia and Paul are fighting in there. She like kills him with a pointy thing, and then sticks her head out, and I guess she lives. We don't see anything else happen to her. She like, the last thing we see from her is her head is like sticking out of this thing, and then the timer runs out, and then the gas just stops flowing or whatever, and then that's it. So I don't know if this is going to be explained in some future movie or something, because like she knows the identity of Jigsaw, but she's never brought up. Knowing the Jigsaw series, like she probably is going to be brought back as an accomplice, right? They're gonna reveal like she was working with him the whole time, even in this one. They're all leaving and they literally walk out into the sunrise, and John Kramer's like, let's get you home. And I'm like, what the hell are you gonna tell his parents? He is covered in blood. We were just doing an impromptu version of the musical Carrie.
And God made Eve to bear the curse of blood! The curse of blood!
I don't know. I don't know what their plan is. Yeah, that's the end. There is a little after credits scene where he has the guy from the beginning who told him that he got cured. This guy was a liar, and he was also in on it. So then he has this guy like chained up to the wall, and then they have this device around his stomach, and then John Kramer's like, where's your scar? Because he like showed him his scar earlier and said, look. They have this like machine with like these claws, and then I guess it's about to like dig into his stomach or something. But then this is also where we see Detective Hoffman, who has also been working with Jigsaw. He's there too, but we don't see what happens. We just see that he is there. I guess he must have died or something. So overall, this movie was fine. It wasn't that enjoyable for me. I just kind of felt like, ugh, the whole time. There definitely were moments like in the traps that made me go like, oh my god, ugh. Like when she started cutting off her leg, I was like, ugh, that would hurt. The whole part with the brain thing just made me go like, what would that even feel like? It probably doesn't feel good. Although I don't know how many pain receptors you have in your brain. I don't know, and I hope I never find out. The only thing that I cared about is when they died, I said, well, that's good because I can't, I. And then this lady's like, when you killed them, you know what I think? I think that you